What you have just seen is by far the most conclusive proof of a human rights violation taking place in the concluding part of the war between the Sri Lankan army and the Tamil Tigers. The facts are being disputed, but there is photographic evidence that's now been put out. Joining us on this program is His Excellency Mr. Prasad Karyavasam, the High Commissioner of Sri Lanka to India. He's joining us from Mumbai. With us also on this broadcast from London is Callum McRae. He's the journalist and filmmaker who's worked on this film, put it together. He's the director of No Fire Zone. Also, Ezilan Naganathan, he's a pro-Tamil activist. But I first want to go across to the High Commissioner, and I want to ask our producers to pull up those images, please, of young Balachandran. And he might have been Prabhakaran's son, but everybody has some basic human rights, sir. Caught on camera, first alive, he's fed a snack. Few hours later, the young kid is found dead. 5 bullets have been pumped through him. It's been certified by leading forensics experts that this boy was first caught alive. He was killed by the Sri Lankan army. Does this not demolish the entire case that the Sri Lankan army has been trying to build up, that there were no human rights violations in the war against the LTTE, sir?
It's my chance to speak at this point?
Yes, Your Excellency.
Right. Now, first of all, this allegation is nothing new, because the same thing came last year around the same time on the eve of the Human Rights Council meeting in Geneva. Strange coincidence, again, Human Rights Council is taking place in March, and we have the same allegation in a much more substantiated form. Now, the very important issue here is why these things come repeating at us. What is the motive of the people who are making this allegation is the first question to our mind. Second issue is this: how we perceive what happened during those last few days, 3 years ago in the eastern province, when Prabhakaran's forces and Sri Lankan army were locked in a very fierce battle, is not clear, because it is fog of war. A lot of things happened at that time. How we perceive events there is one way, whereas it seems there's a virtual world created by some experts who are in London and elsewhere, and they come up with different theories. Now, we don't accept those theories unless we see them. We want to do our own investigations in Sri Lanka, and then only we can accept whether these allegations, these virtual world creations are true or not. So, we reject this completely.
With all respect,
in our view,
Your Excellency,
Prabhakaran's son was of course killed, but he was killed as a result of crossfire or something. We don't know. But these photographs, these series of photographs that is appearing 3 years after the event, it's a virtual thing. It's a virtual world, and we cannot believe
Your
it.
Excellency, with all respect to you, sir, you're questioning the motives of the activists and the filmmakers. You're saying it happened in the fog of war, but you also say you wanted to see proof. Proof is currently on our screen. Young Balachandran alive, he's eating a snack. In the next image, he's dead. Bullets have been pumped through his chest. Forensically, it's been established that it was shot on the same camera on the same day. That's been established forensically, Your Excellency. How is it then that you dispute the basic facts? The world is seeing what you're denying, Your Excellency.
Now, what we are denying is we have not appointed any forensic experts ourselves. This war happened in Sri Lanka. We should be doing our own investigations. We should be provided with the evidence for us. For instance, you should understand the context. Sri Lankan security forces rescued 292,000 civilians from clutches of LTTE. And that's the number we rescued. Sri Lankan forces are not in the habit of killing civilians. We did not do that. And what happened was, there were some parties who were very closely associated with Prabhakaran was killed during that final battle. And that's kind of collateral damage where no one could, and Prabhakaran's son was among them. And this series of photographs, what you call as forensic evidence, by whom? We haven't recognized any of these people. We are not part of this. Sri Lankan government Sri Lanka is a democratic country. We have a security forces, we have our institutions, and we want to do our own investigations. And then only we can make a pass judgment. But judgments passed on Sri Lanka in faraway places like London using technology that we have no clue how they have come to these conclusions, we cannot accept them.
But Your Excellency, the photographs don't lie. You know, the whole world has seen how Balachandran, and you see those clothes, he's wearing the same shorts. He's surrounded by a Sri Lankan army soldier. He's in a sandbag bunker, and immediately after that he's lying dead on the ground. Bullets have been pumped into him. This evidence is so strong, is so incontrovertible that the Sri Lankan government cannot deny it, Your Excellency.
I want to ask you a question.
Yes.
Now,
yes.
No, let me explain how we perceive. Now that bunker could be LTTE bunker because there were so many bunkers there. LTTE bunker that otherwise he looks a very happy child. Now if it is a war situation, in the photograph he seems very normal. How can he be normal if it is a war situation? And this could be a kind of photographic evidence created by LTTE cadres and then put together to bring this report to Sri Lanka. It could be LTTE bunker, it could be LTTEs who are wearing Sri Lankan soldiers' garment. That has happened in the past. They have done that always. We know that in the past, and this could be something like that. What we want is, if there is any evidence of that nature, they must be passed on to Sri Lankan government, and then we will investigate internally. And we have our own institutions. And our security force should be investigated by our institutions, not by international community. There are other countries in the world, there are other democratic countries, they have their security forces, there are allegations in many situations in the world, and when that happens, they do their own investigation. They are not asking UN or other arms to go and investigate. They are not allowing that. You know which countries I am referring to. There are many allegations against those countries, other large democratic countries, but they don't allow that. We have the same conditions.
Okay.
We like to do it ourselves. They must hand over this footage to us, and then we'll do our own investigation.
Okay, you've asked some questions of the filmmakers, and that questioned their motives. You've put out the case for the Sri Lankan government. I want to bring in Callum McRae, because the principal point that the High Commissioner makes is that this could have been an LTTE bunker. How do you know that this is the Sri Lankan army soldier who's standing next to young Balachandran? He seems to be perfectly normal. It wouldn't have been like this had it been a war situation. How do you respond to what you've just heard the High Commissioner say, Mr. McRae?
Well, there's a number of issues that he's raised. I think that the first issue is that, in a sense, it wasn't the war situation, it was after the war, and that is what is particularly significant about the fact this execution was done in such cold blood. Secondly, His Excellency does keep coming up with a whole variety, just throwing out a series of denials, many of which are mutually contradictory. You know, it was an LTTE bunker, the photographs are faked, he was shot in crossfire. These are all contradictory explanations, and the problem is that these photographs came from within the Sri Lankan army. If the Sri Lankan army is as disciplined as they claim it is, then why does he keep saying that we have to be able to do an investigation? We have to investigate it ourselves. They've had 4 years to investigate it themselves, and they have not done. They could get those photographs from their own soldiers. So why are they doing nothing and waiting until the allegations emerge and then saying, "Oh, we can't do an investigation"? I think that the key issue here is that what we have seen is a systematic pattern of executions, sexual violence, and murder in the last few days of the war, leaving aside the
But Mr. McRae, there are a couple of very important points the High Commissioner made. The British Army or the American Army would not accept allegations being made by a Sri Lankan news channel. In the same way, the High Commissioner says, you present this video evidence to us, we will forensically examine it. We are not saying that we will not act against those Sri Lankan army officials who might be found responsible. If they are found responsible, after a Sri Lankan inquiry, the Sri Lankan establishment will go after them. How do you respond to this argument put forth by the Sri Lankan High Commissioner?
Well, the problem is that there have been 4 years since the end of the war, and the Sri Lankan government has not investigated. That is precisely the problem. The Sri Lankan government, at the end of the war, was insisting that no civilians had died. The trouble is they keep changing their story. They insisted no civilians had died whatsoever. They were doing that on the very last day, on the day that the photographs were taken, the Sri Lankan government was saying no civilians had died. Now, subsequently, they've said, oh, okay, maybe 8,000 civilians died, but they all died in crossfire. These kind of huge leaps and contradictions in what they're saying are simply responses to allegations as they emerge and the evidence as it emerges.
No,
Instead of
Mr.
taking
McRae,
any proactive
what you're
measures
calling
themselves.
contradictions, the High Commissioner says are disputed facts. He's saying that it could either be crossfire, it could also be the LTTE which probably killed him. He says he doesn't know. He says that the sequence is not established, that several grievous charges are being leveled without adequate substantiation of the charges. That's the point the High Commissioner makes. He says that we don't know what the truth is. So don't consider this to be contradictory statements from him. He's merely saying that all of those are within the realm of possibility. Mr. McRae.
Okay. The problem is that these photographs are genuine, and these photographs show what they show. And unfortunately, the bluff and bluster will not deny that fact. This was a child who was captured. The situation was very calm. If anybody wanted to fake these photographs, they wouldn't fake a whole variety of them, because that immediately is how you cover contradictions and discrepancies between the photographs. The evidence is absolutely overwhelming. And the trouble is, the Sri Lankan government cannot go on denying it and cannot go on saying we need to do our investigation without actually doing that investigation. If they want to prove that these are not true, there are every single one of the photographs we've shown and the films we've shown, you can see lots of Sri Lankan soldiers filming it on their mobile phones. There is a mass of filmed evidence. If the Sri Lankan government wants to find out what happened, they should launch that investigation. They should get in all those photographs. They should command all their soldiers to give up that footage and do a proper investigation. They have shown no signs for 4 years of having any intention of doing that. And the reason is because they know what happened and they don't want to find out about it and they don't want it exposed.
Okay, you've made some very compelling arguments, and I want to go across once again to the High Commissioner and get his sense on the facts that you've laid out. But before that, I want to show you what the forensic reports show. There's a world-renowned forensics expert called David Founder. He's examined these pictures very, very carefully in the United Kingdom, and he's put together his forensics report. And I want to ask our producers to bring that up on the stage. The first thing which is established by these pictures is that the pictures were taken on the day Sri Lankan army overran rebel territory. This is clearly established from the forensics examination. The second fact that gets established through these images is that the boy is wearing the same clothes in pictures that he was wearing before and after. I want to just get our camera person to zoom in a little bit to show you that he's wearing the same shorts, he's wearing the same undergarments which while he was alive, which you can see here, and if you see here, he's wearing the same shirt and the same undergarments once again. He's wearing the same clothes. That's the second fact that gets established. The third fact, which is established from the metadata, which is embedded on the digital images, proves that these images were taken within a span of 2 hours. So the first image, which shows this boy like any other young kid across the world, sitting over there idly, then he's being fed a snack, which is what makes it even worse. The fact that they actually fed him and then shot him brutally in cold blood. I want to come to the fourth fact that is established from these pictures, and this is important because it shows that this particular round, which was the first shot, actually came at very close range. You know, the kid actually tried to push the weapon away. That's what the forensic expert told us, and you just heard that at the beginning of the show. All the bullets that were pumped in subsequently, this one here, this one here, this one here, were actually shot at very, very close range, because the High Commissioner was saying that this had to do with, you know, he got caught in an exchange of fire. That's clearly not the case. This kid was killed at very, very close range. And that's the question that the High Commissioner must answer. So the fact remains that despite what you're saying, the question that's being asked again and again is that the forensics very clearly demonstrate that this young gentleman, this young kid, was shot at very close range, and these are incontrovertible, undeniable facts, sir. Your Excellency.
These are all claims. Now, even how can you do a forensic examination without having the body in your hand? How can you claim it is Sri Lankan Army's footage? These are all claims. You are doing, this is all judgments are passed in a virtual world. The real world was different. We live in real world. Real world in Sri Lanka is now working hard to heal wounds. This is an attempt by parties in London and elsewhere to lacerate wounds and to deter us from progressing in the path of reconciliation. But then let me leave that aside. Now, how can you claim that one can do forensic evidence on the basis of just footage? Photoshopping can be done in developed countries today very well, and technology is very advanced. And I am not saying these experts have done that. I am not saying that. The experts were presented with a product that was all morphed and then very well done technologically. That is possible. These are possibilities. So all these possibilities remain. And what we claim is you must look at the context. The context of Sri Lankan security forces rescuing a large number of Tamil civilians. So, but then that is different from Prabhakaran and those who are around them fighting Sri Lankan security forces until large movement, hand-to-hand combat. So distance can be very small. And LTTE is known to morph photographs in the past. And then why can't their sympathizers who are now living in London and elsewhere not doing that? Because they are aggrieved that they were defeated, that Sri Lankan government defeated them for once and for all, and they are now going back. Coming back at Sri Lankan state and Sri Lankan people and Sri Lankan Tamil people.
No, but Your Excellency, what explains the fact that
world
4 years have lapsed? 4 years have lapsed. So far, the Sri Lankan Army's probe has not found anybody guilty.
At the Human Rights Council meeting.
Your Excellency, is it Sri Lanka's case that there was not a single human rights violation in the entire war? In 4 years, not one soldier or officer has been found guilty?
We have appointed Lessons Learned and Reconciliation Commission, and then there are recommendations we are following. So how can we find people guilty without evidence?
But you've had evidence. There was a previous documentary as well which was made, Your Excellency. There was a documentary which was made earlier that served as evidence.
Have you? There are situations that are like that. Why only Sri Lankans are being hammered?
No, but Your Excellency, documentaries have been put out in the past. Evidence has been laid out. The question that will be asked is,
yes,
in 4 years, the Sri Lankan government has not found a single soldier or officer responsible
of any
war crime.
But it has to come to Sri Lanka. How can you, it is a virtual world operating in London. We can't operate in virtual world. We have to operate on the ground. We are a democratic country with democratic institutions. We are fully capable of handling our own affairs. We want to find homegrown solutions. These are all aimed at one purpose: bring disrepute to Sri Lanka and to lacerate our wounds. They're not allowing us for reconciliation. The whole aim is that, unfortunately. But I am not blaming these experts. These experts are genuine people, but they are being presented with wrong evidence.
You've questioned the motive of the activists who are working hard on bringing this together. You're saying it's linked with the UNHRC meeting which happens in a couple of days from now, and the timing of this leak is to put Sri Lanka under pressure to bring disrepute to the country internationally. I want to bring in Dr. Ezilin Naganathan, a very well-known Tamil activist. You must respond, Dr. Naganathan, to what the High Commissioner says. He says each time there is a UNHRC meeting, some activist brings up some so-called proof to embarrass the Sri Lankan government. That's his argument against you.
No, it's not so-called proof. It is concrete evidence. 3 videos have come up over the past 3 years, and the Sri Lankan government is completely in denial mode. Forget Sri Lankan government blaming UK Channel 4 videos. The present channel, Headlines Today, sent a reporter inside the Sri Lankan killing fields, brought out concrete evidences and instances of war crimes done. And do you mean that Headlines Today's video inside Sri Lankan fields is doctored or manipulated? No, it was very clear-cut evidence was brought out, and it had claimed 2 or 3 awards for that. That's point number 1. LRC recommendation said 7,000 people have been massacred. UN panel report said 40,000 people have been massacred. Amnesty International said 1,40,000 people have been massacred. And the SLNC is saying that the Sri Lankan government is not in the habit of killing any people here. So that's the third issue. Coming to the third issue, if it's so benevolent, if the Sri Lankan government is so humanitarian, why didn't allow Red Cross to operate during the times of war? Even Hitler allowed Red Cross to operate during the time of war. Why did they allow Red Cross to move out? Why did they push pressurized UN to move out of the war situation? Because they don't want any type of evidence for the war crimes they are going to commit. Fourth issues, if the Sri Lankan government is so generous enough, it is so democratic as being presented, I would suggest let them allow for an independent international war crime investigation monitored by UN, and let the UN or the International Criminal Court will reflect whether the video is doctored or manipulated or in a virtual world. First, the High Commissioner told it's a virtual load image. Then he comes again saying that the video has been taken by, can be due to an LTTE cadre. And third, he's saying that the experts are fine, but the video is false. So, see how much of contradiction from the Sri Lankan High Commissioner in one single interview. And imagine the plight of the state. It's the LLR's recommendation. It is a self-appointed commission where the criminals are allowed to judge. It is impossible for criminals allowed to judge. Already pressurized, just like Sudan model. Just like Sudan model. We want an international independent war crime investigations to be conducted in Sri Lanka in order to bring out the true facts.
Okay, you've made that argument. I want the High Commissioner to respond. Is it possible, sir, for the Sri Lankan
can I
government,
respond to that, please?
Yes, for the Sri Lankan government to judge war crimes by its own army? Because wouldn't an international tribunal be able to come to conclusions? That's what the activists are very concerned about, the impartiality of a Sri Lankan government probe, Your Excellency.
Now, Rahul, I think I made that point earlier, but let me make that point now. If LTTE supporters are aggrieved by LTTE defeat, we can't help about that. We of course want them to join Sri Lanka, join our effort to reconciliation, reconstruction, but if they don't do it, we can't help. But Sri Lankan government will follow certain practices followed by other nations, democratic nations, like their security forces. When there are allegations, they investigate themselves. They're not allowing international investigations to their security forces. I don't want to name countries, but you know those countries. So we follow the same practice. There's nothing wrong about that. And we think our situation does not require international investigations or international involvement. We have to find homegrown solutions to our own problems. Now, for instance, the normalization of northern province is taking place very well. For northern province is growing at 27%. Country average is 7%. Northern province 27%. People have all 300,000 who were displaced have been resettled. Things are happening well, but no, those people who talk, even Dr. Naganathan, who says this, he has not, I don't think he knows the ground situation. These are, being aggrieved for LTTE defeat is one thing, but helping Sri Lanka to go forward and to find the consolidate peace is another thing. So we think there are parties who are living outside the country who are motivated to bring disrepute, not to allow Sri Lanka to come to terms with the reality and the ground situation. So that is our position, and we are not supporting any international investigation to Sri Lanka situation because it doesn't call for that. No. And our situation is can be managed by our institutions, our democratic practice, and that is our position.
Dr. Naganathan, you must respond to the charges of this being a motivated leak just before the UNHRC meets. That each time there's a crucial international meet, activists engage in such leaks so as to put pressure on the Sri Lankan government. That's his argument.
Yeah, the High Commissioner says that you should understand the ground situation. You have to come to Sri Lanka to assess the ground situation. Come on. Our own ex-Chief Justice Verma was not allowed enter into Sri Lanka to conduct an independent probe on the judicial system of Sri Lanka. He was denied visas for that. Our own ex-Chief Justice Verma was denied visas to that. Now, what happened to Sri Lanka's recent Rajapaksa's claim that self-autonomy is completely ruled out?
Who are you?
He was denied.
To do that?
That was a judicial.
Can we send our Chief Justice to investigate Indian Chief Justice?
For the impeachment process, it was an international impeachment body. It is an international judgment body led by Justice Verma. You didn't allow him to enter into that.
Come on.
Why
this is hilarious. Hilarious.
It's not hilarious. It's a fact.
Can I respond to that, please?
Yes. Your Excellency, please respond.
Now, let me respond to that. Now, impeachment of our Chief Justice was done according to our constitution. And in fact, the Indian International Bar Association has said that we have done it properly. And Justice Verma was trying to come to Sri Lanka on a mission that was not welcomed by Sri Lanka. So therefore, he would not. Otherwise, we have great respect for Justice Verma. We think that we have followed our own constitutional provisions, and Chief Justice was impeached, and that's gone. And why should we, why only Sri Lankan democracy should be subject to all sorts of international intrusion? That is what we don't understand.
Okay.
What is this problem? Why can't now can we send our own delegations to other countries to investigate when there are allegations locally? We can't. We don't do that. So I think this attitude that everything in Sri Lanka has to be handled by international community is wrong. Sri Lanka is fully capable of doing it. Our economy is the fastest growing economy in South Asia. And we are doing well. In fact, I am in Mumbai today to do a promotion of Sri Lanka. I'm sorry that I am not in Delhi, so therefore I can't hear things very clearly also across these microphones. But I am here to promote India, Sri Lanka. So I think
you made your point. I'm also out of time on this program. I want to listen to what Callum McRae has to say. Because, you've had your say, Your Excellency. I want to listen to Callum McRae because you're making the point that no other country would allow international investigators in. Sri Lanka is being subjected to the scrutiny which the United States or the UK would not allow themselves to be subjected to. What do you have to say in response, Callum McRae?
Well, I have made a number of films, mostly actually about allegations of war crimes and crimes against humanity committed by Britain, by the UK and Iraq. Obviously, that's my main focus because that's where I come from. However, on the question of what happened in Sri Lanka, there are a number of things I want to say. First of all, it shouldn't be forgotten our film is an hour and a half long, and the story at Balav Chandran, which is extremely important, is only 2 minutes of that film. Secondly, in terms of what should happen internationally, this comes back to whether Sri Lanka is capable, the Sri Lankan regime of President Rajapaksa is capable of investigating itself. Now, they set up the Lessons Learned from Reconciliation Commission, which they say does that function. It made 3 very, very significant recommendations, which were very good. They were that the army should withdraw from civil administration. What's actually happened is the army MOD spending has gone up 25% in the last year, and this is supposed to be in peacetime, so rejecting their own recommendation. It recommended that religious and cultural observance should be allowed and encouraged. When students in Jaffna tried to celebrate Martyrs' Day, they were thrown in jail under the Prevention of Terrorism Act. And the LRC recommended that the disappearances were a cause of great concern and should be investigated. Nothing credible has been done. The relatives keep being promised things and nothing happens. More importantly, though, the Reconciliation Commission did simply not failed entirely to address the whole question of war crimes and crimes against humanity. It simply said that all the Sri Lankan government was and that all deaths were caused by a crossfire or the LTTE. The point is they've demonstrated they cannot do it. The other thing which is critical for any country being able to investigate itself is that it has a proper independent judiciary. We have seen judges beaten up in Sri Lanka. We have seen the Chief Justice, and everyone internationally knows very well why she was impeached. She was impeached because she ruled unconstitutional, correctly ruled unconstitutional, a law which the Rajapaksa regime was trying to put through, which consolidated their power and further weakened regional autonomy. So Sri Lanka is not able and cannot, is not willing and is not able to investigate itself. And there is a very clear international precedent which Sri Lanka and India signed up to. But I just finish this one point. In 2005, the United Nations voted unanimously, including India, including Sri Lanka, that states have a duty to protect their own civilians from war crimes, crimes against humanity, genocide, or ethnic cleansing. If those states fail to do that, or if, as in the case of Sri Lanka, those states are actually policies.
Okay, you've had your say, Mr. Callum McRae. You've had your say. We've also heard from the Sri Lankan High Commissioner. We've heard from the Tamil activist. You decide. You've heard what the Sri Lankan government had to say. You've heard what the filmmaker has to say. You've also heard from the activists. You decide where you stand on this deeply divisive issue. The pictures are out in the public domain. The government says we will forensically examine them before we reach any conclusions. Is that good enough or not? Everyone must decide for himself. For the moment, Your Excellency Prasad Karayavasam, Callum McRae and Dr. Ezilin Naganathan for joining us on the center stage face-off. Thank you very much.